It's the switch you have to make when you move from being a worker to being a manager, to being a supervisor, to being a chief officer. And this transition can be seen easily as one way is from technical, tactical to strategic. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, my friends. I hope you know what time it is. It's time for woo-woo. You know it. Life of a CISO with yours truly. Woo-woo, let's hear it. Dr. E is in the house. Hope you are doing awesome. Hope you are living the life of your dreams. And most importantly, hope you are living life on your terms. Because that's really what life's all about, is you design and create the life that you want. Now, what I want to talk about in this episode is a pivotal shift that has to occur when you switch from a security engineer to a CISO. Really, it's the switch you have to make when you move from being a worker to being a manager, to being a supervisor, to being a chief officer. And this transition can be seen easily as one way is from technical, tactical to strategic. So that's one shift that has to occur. And we've covered that a lot in our different episodes. I'll briefly cover it here. But what that looks like is you have to move from being very, very detailed, very, very technical, and very, very tactical. Because as a security engineer, you're paid to identify specific problems, specific issues, specific vulnerabilities, and specific risks. Your job is to identify problems. Your job is to identify issues so they can be fixed before a system goes live. So you're basically that person that's going to go around and do the safety checks. Somebody who does safety checks, their job is not to solve anything. Their job is to identify problems. If you're doing a safety check, your job is to identify safety issues that make this vehicle, this plane, this system, this network not secure, vulnerable, or risk to something bad happening, so it can be mitigated and fixed before the system goes live or the system takes off, depending on whether we're talking about systems or airplanes or whatever the domain is. But when you are technical and tactical, you're all about finding the problems. You're all about pointing out the issues. And you want to be as specific and as detailed as humanly possible. The deeper you can go into understanding any issue or problem, the better you're going to be as a security engineer. The higher level you go and the more abstract you are, makes you less effective as a security engineer. But here's the rub. Here's the twist. Here's the transition. When you move in to management, directors, vice presidents, and ultimately, you move in to a chief information security officer, it flips. What used to be a liability becomes an asset, and what used to be an asset becomes a liability. And what I mean by that is security engineers don't want to play in the abstract. The more abstract, the more high level, the less effective you are. The more technical and tactical, the better you are. With a chief information security officer, it's the opposite. If you are a chief information security officer and you play in the tactics, you play in the technical, and you play in the details, you will die. You will not be effective. You will not last. And one of three things will happen. You will either get fired because you are not doing your job, you will quit because you are way too frustrated, or you'll basically get demoted in place where they let you keep the title, but you're not a CISO. You're a security engineer with a CISO title, which doesn't do anybody any good. Chief information security officers thrive in the abstract. They thrive in the strategy. They thrive in the 30,000-foot view. World-class CISOs need to have an entire bird's eye view of the entire organization, the entire infrastructure, the entire network, the entire business process, understand that at a high level, and figure out where there's exposures or weaknesses, and then put together strategies or solutions for fixing and identifying and reducing that overall risk. So CISOs thrive in the strategic. They strive in the abstract. Also, security engineers get paid to identify problems. Once again, if you can't pivot and you can't shift from a security engineer to a CISO, it is going to be detrimental. You are going to die. If you are a CISO and all you do is point out problems, you will not last. CISOs do not bring problems to the table. Chief officers bring solutions. Chief officers bring solutions that increase revenue and increase profitability. Chief officers bring solutions that give you a competitive advantage. Chief officers don't come with problems. They come with solutions. So that's the first shift that you must make. And I want to briefly cover that here because I've covered that in a lot of other episodes, so this was a good summary. But what I really want to focus in on this episode of Life of a CISO is a different transition that takes place. And that transition is moving from being told what to do to managing and tracking what you have to do. Security engineers don't really have to set business goals. They don't have to manage their time because they have a boss that tells them what to do. So if you're a security engineer, you're going to come into work and you're going to be told, the goal is that we have this security incident and event management solution launched in 5 months. You're being told that. You don't have to do goal planning. You have to do goal setting. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You're told what the goal is. And you don't even have to manage your time. Because you come in and you're told you're going to work full time on setting up the security incident event management solution. And of course, you come in the next day and they're like, oh, we have this other project. We need you to work on this project for 2 hours and this one for 6 hours. Oh, we need you to work on this for 6, this for 3, this. But you are told what to do. And you are told how to use your time. So as a security engineer, even world-class security engineers, you don't have to be really good at goal setting. You don't have to be good at goal prioritization. You don't have to be good at time management because all of that is given to you and done by somebody else. It's done by your manager. It's done by your boss. It's done by your director. Somebody you directly report to manages you. And the way they manage you is they give you your goals and they give you the allocation of time. And this, probably even more than the technical to strategic, is where many CISOs struggle. Because now you've moved for 3, 5, 7, 8, 10 years, however long you've been a security engineer, you've always been told what to do. You've always been given a plan. You've always been told how to utilize your time. And now all of a sudden, you get promoted. You are now a chief information security officer. Here's the reality. Yes, chief officers have some general reporting, but it's reporting from a business organizational standpoint, not from a management standpoint. If you are a CISO and you report to the CEO is not managing you. They're not going to give you your goals, and they're not going to show you how to allocate your time. It's for business organizational structure that you provide input, and if there is a disagreement and it needs to be settled, then the CEO would settle it. And of course, the CEO reports to the board. And then the head of the board, the chairman of the board, reports to the shareholders. And so everybody has somebody they're reporting to, but once again, it's strategic business focused, in which you're giving them strategic information and data. They are not telling you what to do, telling you your goals, or managing your time. So now all of a sudden, for 8-10 years, you've been told what to do, and now all of a sudden, you're a CISO, and you're like, what do you mean? I have to create the yearly plan. What do you mean I have to manage and allocate my time and do all these things? So it's a skill that they don't often teach in school. It's a skill that most people that get promoted to CISO don't do very well. So I just wanted to spend a little time on those areas. Goals. The easiest way I have found to utilize goals is to step back and basically have 12-month targets. So what do I want to achieve in 12 months? And what I like to do is I like to have what I call the overarching goal. As a CISO, you need one primary focus. The reality is, any chief officer is going to be doing multiple things multiple times. And by the way, I'm talking about a CISO, that this applies to your life, right? You are a chief officer of your life. You're a chief officer of your family, right? This stuff that I'm teaching you, while I'm doing it in the context of being a chief information security officer, I hope you realize, and I hope you grasp the magnitude that this applies to any area of your life. So these skills that I'm teaching you work in every area. And the reality is this. People can debate it. People can say what they want. But the reality at the end of the day is all empirical evidence points to the fact that we can focus in on one thing primarily. So I always say, I can multitask. No, you can't. You think you can, but you really can't. So the reality is, as a chief officer, you're going to have many things on your plate, but there needs to be one primary. So for the next 12 months, what is your primary goal and objective? What is the primary goal and objective for the organization? Is it to achieve a security certification? It might be to take the company public, and there's a whole set of security guidelines for the SEC that has to do that. It might be to roll out a risk-based security program for the entire organization. It might be to implement a fully integrated BCP DRP, including all business units and all prioritization. But the reality is, you need to have one primary goal, one primary objective. Because if you sit there and go, oh, there's 20 things you want to do, you end up doing none of them. So you could have secondaries and tertiaries, but you need to have a primary. Then, under that primary, what are the 4 main phases that need to be completed in order to achieve that goal? Now, I know things don't always break down into 4, but as best as possible, try to break it down into 4. Because here's the reality. If it's more than 4, it's probably more than a year. And if it's less than 4, it's probably less than a year. And if you haven't connected the dots yet, I'll connect the dots for you. We're basically breaking it down into 4 quarters. So we're going in and saying, okay, you have this primary audacious goal. It is a big goal that you would like to accomplish this year. So the 4 sub-goals are basically what has to be done every 3 months. So what has to be achieved in quarter 1, what has to be achieved in quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So you're taking these into 90-day chunks. What are the 90-day pieces you have to break it down to? Like I said, if there's only 3, maybe it's a 9-month program, which is okay. If there's 5, then it's probably a year and a quarter. So it's 15 months. Now, trick here. This is helping you scope whether the size of the problem is correct. If you can't break it down into 4 goals, if you can't break it down into 4 sub-goals, if you can't break it down into 4 90-day chunks, it might be a smaller project than you realize. It might only be a 3 or 6 month project, and that's okay. On the other hand, if you can't break it down into 4 chunks, and you can only break it, Eric, oh no, this thing is so gigantic, like it needs like 16 or 20 chunks, or it's huge, then guess what? You need to go in and de-scope it. It's too big. You don't want a 5-year project here. Now, it could be a piece of a 5-year project, but you don't want to manage it a 5-year. You want to try to get it down to about 12 months and break it into 3-month chunks. And what I'm teaching you here is not stuff I've read in books or I've gone to seminars. This is the laboratory of Eric. This is me being a CISO and working in businesses and working with executives and coaching executives for over 20 years. This is based on me trying, experimenting, failing, and you get the benefit of learning from my mistakes so you don't have to make those same mistakes. So then we go in and we say, okay, now that we have our primary goal and we have our 4 sub-goals, we get those locked, we get those clear, we get those very articulated. Then I say, okay, now let's take this first sub-goal and now let's break it into 3 chunks because it's a quarter, right? It's 3 months. So now, what do we do in month 1? What do we do in month 2? What do we do in month 3? And I think you see where we're going. Then you take each month and you break it down into 4 chunks for the weeks. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting a level of clarity and visibility that you've never had. The reason why goals don't work, the reason why people give up on their goals, and the reason why people get frustrated is because they lack clarity on what needs to be done. It's just an abstract idea. They have no idea how to get started. They have no idea where to begin, and they have no idea what steps to take, and therefore they get frustrated. So a little hint here. If you are trying to accomplish a goal in any area of your life, especially as a CISO, and you are frustrated and you are not making progress and you're not working and you're not giving up, it's one reason and one reason alone. You lack clarity and specificity. Because if you had clarity and you had specificity and you knew what to do, you would do it. The only reason you're not doing it is because you don't know what to do. And the only reason you don't know what to do is because you lack clarity and specificity. This approach that I'm giving you locks that all in. Because if I'm now going in and saying, okay, what is one thing you want to accomplish this year? We break it down into 4 chunks. We take each chunk and break it down into 3 pieces. We take each piece and break it down into 4 chunks. How do you not have clarity? How do you not have specificity? And here's the cool part. As you start doing this, you start realizing whether this is really a 1-year, a 6-month, or a 3-year project. Because you'll very quickly start seeing if you all of a sudden are taking the first sub-goal and you're breaking it down into 3 chunks, and you look at that chunk going, there's no way that chunk could be done in a month. Like this is like a year. Then you realize you might have a 10-year project instead of a 1-year. So as you're working on this, you might have to circle back and refine the scope and refine what it is, because you might realize it's too much or it's too little. But isn't it better to know now than 6 months in when you're over your head, you've promised something and you can't deliver on it? So this upfront planning is almost guaranteeing success, because you're forcing the details up front so you can get clarity on whether this is achievable or not. So now you go through and you do all that. Once you get all that clear and focused, now you have a plan of execution. Right? Now you bring in your team and you start allocating resources and sharing with them the plan and start telling them what role each one of them are going to play. And then now you can manage and track. Now, because you have basically what I've done is you've created a detailed program plan. So one of the other problems that people do is you have this disconnect where an executive goes in and they come up with the goal. This is what we're going to do this year. This is what we're going to accomplish. They're the one with the vision. They're the one with the clarity. They're the one that knows what needs to be done. But instead of them doing what I just said, where they break it down into 4 chunks, each chunk into 3, each chunk back into 4, and they really get clear on, yes, this is or is not feasible, and adjust and adapt, how can you ever hand that off to a PM? But what most chief officers do is they just say, this is what I want. They don't have the details, they don't understand the specificity or anything else, and then they hand it off to a program manager and say, I'm too busy to deal with this, you figure it out. You figure out how to do it, and then they disconnect. Now this project manager goes off and does what they think needs to be done, and then at some point in a month, 3 months, 5 months, the executive wakes up and goes, what the heck is this? This is not what I wanted. So big lesson. Once you figure out the detailed plan, you can hand it off to somebody else to manage. But it's your responsibility to be involved with the detailed plan, because you're the one with the vision. You're the one with the goals. You're the one that knows what needs to be done. So don't hand a project off too early and have somebody who's not bought in have to figure out the details for a plan that you did not give them. Chief officers must be involved in the detail. They don't need to be involved in the management and implementation if they do the details correctly. So that's our goal piece. Time management. This is another fun area, because here's the reality. You only have 24 hours in a day. Let's assume you work for 10. Just doing easy math. Typically, CISOs probably a little more than that. But let's assume you work for 10 and you work 5 days. Probably not a safe assumption either, but we'll go with easy math. So you get 50 hours. You have 50 hours a week to implement this plan and to be a chief officer. How are you going to break it down? Now, I will tell you, the old way I used to teach it, so if you listen to some of my old recordings from 6, 7, or 8 months ago, don't listen to them. It works, but I used to do a bottom-up. So the bottom-up approach that I used to do with all my CISO clients is I told them for an entire week, they need to track everything they do at 15-minute increments. It's great if you do it. Most people don't have the discipline. They're like, you are nuts. There's no possible way I'm going to do this. Too much work, too much energy, too much effort, bleep. So I don't do it. So I don't get the data. I don't get the information. And by the way, if you did do it, it's very, very informative and very helpful. But most people think it's too much work. So now recently in the last couple months, I've come up with this new top-down model. And this new top-down model is quite simple. what are the top tasks you need to be working on? And you usually want about 4 or 5. So for a CISO, if you go in and look at your top areas or tasks, one is going to be employee management. One is going to be interfacing and working with the other executives. One is going to be implementing the plan. One is going to be potentially putting out fires. And one is going to be working with the business units. So those are 5 you can use. You might have them differently. Here's the trick. You want 5, maybe 4, maybe 6. But if you get too little, it's not granular enough. If you get too much, it's hard to manage. I found 1 or 2 doesn't have near enough granularity to get visibility. 10 is way too much, way too difficult, way too many moving parts. To me, 5 is sort of the sweet spot. So if you want to be a rebel and do 4 or 6, you can. But like I said, if you want to follow the plan, stick with 5, and you can use the 5 that I just laid out. Then here's the question. In a perfect world, how would you use those 5? What is the percent allocation? So I'm going to go in, and management of my employees would be 10%. So that's 5 hours a week or 1 hour a day. And then working with the other executives, that's 20%. That's 2 hours a day. And you go through and you do this. So you do percent allocation to add up to 100%. So now you look at that and say, okay, this isn't a perfect world. I would spend 10% here, 20% here, 20% here, 15% here, and you have it all broken down. Then put it on your calendar to see what it looks like. So from 8 to 9, I'm managing employees. From 9 to 10, I'm working with other business associates. From 10 to 12, I'm putting out fires or unplanned. From 12 to 1, I'm meeting with the C-suite. From 1 to, and you basically lay it out. So now you have your entire day scheduled, your entire week. And now you refine if needed, but now you have your ideal day, your ideal week. This is ideally in a perfect world. This is how you would use your time. Now, we don't live in an ideal world, and perfection is overrated. So now we do a fun exercise where you call merging. You now take your ideal schedule, your ideal time management, you take your real schedule, and now we try to deconflict them. We try to merge them together. So now you look at your real calendar and you're like, I actually spend 3 hours a day managing my team, not 1. Is that really needed? Because if that's really needed, then where am I going to take 2 hours from? And here's the fun part. Time is fixed. So you can't create more time. So that means if you add an hour, you have to take an hour from somewhere else. So this now becomes the ultimate prioritization game. Okay, I really need 3 hours to manage my employees. I only have 1 hour allocated. And honestly, I can squeeze an hour, but I can't squeeze 2. So, okay, maybe I have to get it done in 2 because guess what? All those other things currently on my calendar are higher priority. So if that's truly higher priority, then you have to adapt and adjust how you work. And what you'll find is this does take a lot of energy. It does take time, but once you resolve the conflicts and you get your ideal and your real aligned, you're going to realize not only how much more you get done, not only how easy it is to get in a flow state, but most importantly, you're going to have much lower stress. Because stress is caused by a conflict, and that conflict is caused because what you want to do and what you need to do are 2 different things. You can't get done what you want, and you know you're not aligned with how you're spending your time. So this exercise helps get you in alignment, lower the stress, and get you clear and focused on what you need to do. And this is something that even if you're a CISO for 5 years, you probably never were taught this. So if you want to be a world-class CISO, if you're becoming a CISO, or you want to get your CISO skills to the next level, focus on goal setting and time management. And I just laid out 2 ways to do that in a very systematic, focused manner, which almost guarantees, but I can't guarantee. So the guarantee that's not guaranteed, because I can't guarantee success, but give these a shot, post some comments and let me know how they're working out for you. Because guess what? Whether you realize it or not, whether you recognize it or not, you are destined to be a world-class CISO.